Just wanted to show off some of the stuff I've been working on with the Canvas Starter app. I've moved the tests around and I've started adding some actual tests. So I'll show you where the tests are now, and then we can look at how to test a store in the Flux architecture. It's important as we start writing more React applications that we are diligent about writing tests at the same time, so that we don't end up with a bunch of JavaScript projects that are basically untested, and then every time we change something, really bad things happen. So this morning I got thinking more about how React brings everything into one spot. So your logic and your view are in one file, which is contrary to what we've been taught, over all the years. You should have separate templates. But now React says, no, I don't think so. You should have everything in one place. And so you end up with code that looks like this. And it turns out that that makes it really easy to figure out what's going on. So in that same thought process, I thought it might be nice to just have the tests live right next to the thing that they test. So then you don't have to go hunt through a separate directory and then figure out all of the paths to the objects that you're trying to test. So we're going to try this for a little while. I've done this in the Canvas Starter application, and then we'll use it inside of Open Assessments. We'll put all of the tests right next to the thing that they test. And then it's also easy to see the things that are not tested. So you can look right here and say, oh, there's no test for index.jsx. Maybe I should add one. It also makes figuring out the paths a lot easier. So going forward, we'll try this and then decide if it's a really bad idea or not. The nice thing with Webpack is that since Webpack has an entry point, and then that entry point imports its dependencies, and then those dependencies import their dependencies, and so on down the tree, the tests aren't going to get sucked into your final code because they're not imported into anything in that dependency tree. All right. So I've been working on doing this, and I thought I'd add some tests for the messages store. And it turns out that testing the stores are somewhat complicated because one contains state that is inaccessible from the outside world, and two, they are singletons. So they carry their state during the duration of the test. And I'll show you the error that I'm running into. I haven't actually figured out a solution for it yet. I thought I did, but just need to spend more time. All right, so here's the messages store. And this one should be fairly easy to test because it does not make any AJAX calls back to the server. The only thing that it does is it says, give me all of the current messages, which is just an array of messages. And you can ask it a question to say, do you have messages? And this way, whenever different events occur in the system, like if an AJAX call times out, or you get back a not authorized, or if there's just an error, you can write those messages into the message store, and then that will update the views so that that message is presented to the user. I've gone ahead and added this add message. This is just whenever the application needs to communicate with the user for whatever reason, the individual components can generate an action. So if I go up here into action, I have this messages action. And it's just going to be this add message action. And the store will respond to that by adding that message and then emitting a change to update the components. So the question becomes, how do you test that? I took a look around, and one of the things that people recommended was telling Jasmine to mock out the built-in timers so that you can not have to deal with any asynchronous activity that's going on inside of the dispatcher. So right here, you can see I have a test that tests that there are no messages in the message store. So it just says if current is basically an empty array, then the test passes, and if has messages as false, then the test passes. So that's one state of our store, is basically empty. But that's not a very interesting state. So what we want to do is test to see if the store has messages. So the first thing that we do in our test here is that we add a message, and we do that via the actions, just like the application interacts with the store. Our tests interact with the store the same way. I don't really love it because we're not isolated, but in other words, we're also executing code that's inside of the messages action. So if an error occurs there, that error is going to show up in our test for the store, and that's not great because you want an error to only show up in one place if it's going to show up. But it's the only way that you can test the stores, because again, they are completely isolated from the outside world. They don't let you. They don't have setters that let you mutate the state of the store. So what we do is we add a message by calling the action to generate that message. Then we call this clock tick. That'll advance the clock, which should cause the dispatcher to send out the message to the store, and then we expect the store to not be empty. All right, so here's the tests. So just really quickly, I'm running Karma, and all you have to do in the Canvas starter application is drop into the client directory and type Karma start. This will run your tests continually and watch for changes, and it's pretty fast. I have it currently set up to run both Firefox and Chrome, so it's running 2 sets of tests. I'll probably pull that out before I commit it. I just wanted to see if it was working in both browsers. And that's pretty cool. You can run it in Safari and Phantom and everything else as well. So you can see we still have one failed message, or one failed test, and that is that we expected to only have this single message in the array, and we ended up with this undefined. And I believe that that's because the store is maintaining some kind of state. I'm not totally sure of that, because I still have to figure out why it would do that. But it's cool because I actually get some tests from my store. If I wanted to maybe pretend like I had not yet written this test, I could come in and delete this right here. So, or maybe somebody just comes along later and deletes this. They're like, oh, where does this get used? Then our tests run, you can see they run before I was even able to tab over to the console. And there are now 2 failures. And so I can say, oh, I need to go and put that back. So let's put this code back. And now there's just the 1 failure. And so then I just need to debug into this and figure out why this add message seems to be adding an undefined value into the array here. So it's doing its job. Any questions about tests inside of the Canvas starter application?